Welcome to Where We Meet, a podcast by Society. I'm Jessica Freiberg, and each episode we start with an accounting topic and then see where the conversation takes us. Because in our world, it never stays in one lane. Do you ever have questions that start with accounting and go in a completely different direction?
All the time.
Almost always.
Yeah, because accounting isn't one thing. It's a variety of different issues that businesses, organizations, other people encounter every day.
Yeah, and so accounting is never just accounting, right? And I think that's what this podcast is about, is bringing all the different facets that affect accounting and businesses and organizations into one conversation, into one room, right? So excited to be here.
Great. On today's podcast, I am joined by
Isabella Poludniak.
And Tyler Kuda.
And this has really been intentional because we wanted to bring people from different parts of the company to really share their experiences and working with others and what that impact looks like and how they're dealing with their clients and other situations they're encountering. So Izzy, what's something that conversations maybe that you've had this week that could be relevant to this conversation?
Yeah, so actually we've been talking a lot about recruiting. 2 weeks ago, we had an event that we've had for several years in a row. Society U, right? And so that is a one-day event that the firm holds for college students local to Chicago, but they can also come from out of town. We kind of have it in May so that there could be some potential for students that are from outside of the Chicagoland area to attend as well. And it's really meant to kind of give them a little bit of an insight of the experience of working at a CPA firm and across the different departments and answer some of their questions about how we recruit, how the landscape's different. And so that sparked a lot of conversations with them, but also with our staff and with our clients as we kind of share that experience about what we're seeing and, you know, how college students really have to look at their career path maybe differently than we did when we were first starting out. And I think that, you know, it touches on accounting, right? Because that's where our firm's bread and butter is. But I think even that is changing a little bit for CPA firms when we're starting to talk about tech and AI. And maybe more human aspects to it. But, you know, it can also range into other areas such as wealth management, right, which is one of our arms, to Tyler's point, like digital marketing, right? So it isn't just college students that are entering in accounting. I think everybody has a different landscape that they're walking into. So I don't know. Do you have any perspective on that, you know, part of conversations that you've had that we might want to unpack?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really interesting, some of the conversations I've had with students that were attendants of Society U, but also with our new interns that started last week. You know, they're curious about the AI and how that's going to impact, you know, entry-level positions. You know, we were joking about whether they, you know, chose the right industry to go into. I mean, the good news is I think that there's still going to be a lot of opportunity, and not that we're going to dive into AI today, but you know, I think there's still opportunities for students who are going into accounting. And there's a lot, you know, that path can look different for everyone, which I think is always a unique thing about being an accounting major. But really, you know, just thinking about the skills that they need and maybe adapting some of those skills. And Tyler, I know that you had a lot of conversation with the students, you know, kind of leading up to the event. And I'm curious, you know, what kind of feedback or if there was questions they were asking you to, you know, just to better understand what the experience would be like.
Yeah, as they were leaving college, they have a lot of debt. They need to get a job quickly. So their top priority was everyone had a resume in hand. And I think it was important that they were all trying to craft the best resume. Back when we were growing up, I guess you could say, you would tailor the description. You would have like different skills that you did that were relevant to the job. But I think now you could just produce that and everybody's doing that. So it's like almost like an even playing field. So they're saying, how do I stand out? And I think some of the old-fashioned ways of showing up to the office that you want to work at is really important. Obviously, it comes down to who you know. There was a really good statistic I saw that the earlier you are to apply to a job within that first wave is really important because they're using programs that sift through hundreds of applications and they kind of cut off that window at a certain point. So if you want to raise your odds of getting a job quickly, apply fast.
Oh, that's really interesting. I know for Society U, you know, some of the things that they were asking about specifically was, you know, what kind of skills would be relevant now? What are we looking for, right, when we're hiring? So beyond just the resume, like you mentioned, like how do I go beyond that? What kind of skills should I be showcasing? Like you said, I think showing up is really half the battle.
It is, yeah.
And just really being involved. Even my kids are asking, like, what kind of things should I be involved in now to, like, build my resume for going to college in the future? And, just having those activities maybe outside of school, showing that you can, manage different aspects, time management, manage different activities. I know that can also be something that we look for when we're looking for students to join us.
Yeah, I still think it's about work ethic, right? I don't think that changed. So if you are college students and you're looking to get into that first entry level career, right, or entry level position in your career, it's still relevant that you did something ahead of time, right, versus somebody else that might not have, because that shows that you can show up in a workplace, right, that you can be responsible, that you can communicate with other people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the same industry, right? A lot of those same skills transfer really well into other industries. And so not thinking necessarily, oh, well, okay, I was a cashier at Kohl's, right? How is that going to transfer over to maybe doing accounting? Well, the cashier aspect, maybe, right? Yeah. That has to do with numbers, but you did a lot of customer service. You did a lot of communication. You have to show up on time. I think sometimes, we don't talk a lot about all those other soft skills that make you successful beyond just the numbers. And so really thinking from the jump, if you're in high school or if you're in college, even if you can't get that accounting internship for whatever reason, right, you're going to school out of state or whatever it is, still trying to work and to prove that, you can be a responsible adult. But also, I think taking initiative, right? So if you are in those roles, well, what did you do to kind of add value, right? Or how did you really wanted some experience in a certain area? What did you do to try to get it, right? So differentiating, I guess, yourself with your actions maybe, and then trying to tell that story in your resume, I think is helpful.
Yeah. And again, everything revolves around people, right? So even in accounting, yes, we're dealing with numbers, we're dealing with financial statements, we might be dealing with tax returns, but it all comes down to the relationships and the people that we're working with. And so I think continuing to hone those people skills, to your point, regardless of what type of industry you're working in, is really important. And I think even from a marketing perspective, right, as we think about how we market to students and all of that, a lot of it's about the relationships that they're able to build internally as a SETI with clients and, out in the world.
I think the higher you go up in the accounting ladder, most of your job does become relationship. You guys do tons of events. You're always getting out there trying to meet new people. I think that's how you build a portfolio, bring value to the firm. You can even probably move up the ladder quickly if you're networking. And obviously, everyone's very introverted in accounting, though. So it's kind of a rare breed. But if you could break out of that shell, I know we do different networking seminars. Yours is really great, Izzy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Like how to shake people's hands or ask the right questions or when to leave a conversation, or all those things are really important.
Well, I think in college, there's a lot of emphasis for good or bad. And maybe that landscape's changing a little bit, and I hope it is, right? But most of the emphasis is on the numbers and the technical aspect of your job, right? Especially in accounting, right? I don't know how it is in marketing. Maybe you can share a little bit about that. But there is a soft skill piece, but it isn't as, I think, emphasized as the technical piece. And that's where I think as a firm, right, or any organization or business, right, you have to think about building that into how you train folks, right? How to manage, how to communicate, right? Like how to show up and network, because that if that's never been taught to somebody, yeah, there's going to be people that have innately that skill developed from whatever reason. But I would say most people probably don't. And it's nerve-wracking and intimidating. And so, I don't know. Did you do a lot of that in your college career? I know I know that your career path has been taking you all over the place, right? But do you remember in college, did you do a lot of those classes?
We really did. Well, I went to a really small school. It was like 300-400 people.
Yeah.
No, we were not given that opportunity. Just where I came from was either you had it or you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important that we give kids the opportunity. Even coming to something like Society U, right, is an opportunity for them to interact with peers. There's kids coming from all different colleges, so they can kind of share what their experiences are. Understand maybe what skills is somebody else learning at one school that they're not learning.
Oh,
and
for
maybe
sure.
That's something that they need to be thinking about. But we give them an opportunity to interact with different departments. And I think it's just really helpful to like have a better understanding. I mean, I know when I was in college, obviously going back a ways here, but I didn't even really know what it meant to work in public accounting.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
I was just like, I don't know. I guess this is what I should do. This is like the path that people say I should take.
Yeah.
But ultimately, until I really got into it, I had no idea. And especially going back to the relationship piece, I mean, I didn't really realize the type of interaction I was going to have, especially early on in my career with, directly, obviously with clients, but even with colleagues and what that was going to look like. So, which is, honestly why I've stayed in public accounting, because I love that aspect of it. Obviously, I'm a little more of an extrovert than the average accountant. So for me, it's definitely the relationships and the people that interest me and excite me about my job. But I think, trying to give people that perspective is really, I think, what's so valuable about that, even if it's a one-day experience, to let them have that kind of inner insight into, what is it like to work in public accounting? What does that look like for me going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's about caring too, right? Like if you care about being successful, if you care about developing your skill set, right? If you care about developing your knowledge, like you will be successful, right? And so that's half the battle, is just showing up, like we talked about earlier, but also, thinking about all the ways that you can grow along the way. I was actually thinking as you were talking and made that point, when I was in college, I'm not sure I was fully aware of the fact that like I should try to get as much out of college as possible.
Certainly.
Like, I'm going to be honest, right? Like I was going through it. I was getting good grades, right? It was very much like, okay, let me just knock this off, and not thinking like, let me suck every single awesome thing that I can from my professors, from the environment, from the networking, right? Like that wasn't, especially because I commuted, right? So I went to school at DePaul, which, was a great experience, but I didn't live on campus. And so I think that does change the dynamic a little bit, where you have to be much more, I think, purposeful about being involved. But like looking back on it, I always tell college students, like, get as much out of that as you can. Like when you're learning in classes, don't just learn to pass and get a good grade. Like try to learn the concepts, because I think that the individuals that do that well, I think have a leg up and a foot up to those that I think are just trying to get through the classes. And I think the more and more that it gets competitive, if it does in any kind of given industry, that makes a big difference. So, I think that that's, looking back on my life, maybe would have been something that I would have maybe dived a little bit more deeper.
Yeah. Well, and I think like the access that students have now, right, with the, quickly advancing technologies out there, they can probably learn a lot more about it and, even kind of play around with like different softwares, different tools, like how does this work? How does it, how do you create a tax return based on this? So I do think there's a lot more information available to them if they are interested in kind of, trying to be proactive about what that looks like and what a potential career in public accounting looks like.
Yeah, I think equally as you said, people are concerned about the tech becoming stronger. But I would say that, like you mentioned, even though tech is stronger, you could use that as your advantage because it's still not there. It's still just doing your everyday tasks. So you need to get a leg up anyway. We have the tools. I know when I'm interested in something, I study it until, I don't know, I lose sleep over it, essentially, at least so I get a grasp on it. So I think, there's a good way to get ahead of your peers quickly because there are other things out there, but you have to turn your downtime into something a lot more productive, which we have many distractions now more than ever.
Well, and I think also, this didn't happen necessarily to you, but as we think about students and like going through like a process of interviewing, because there's so much information out there, I think there's kind of an expectation, right? When you're going through an interview that like you've done a little bit of research.
Sure.
Like maybe, you know who we are, a little bit about us. Some pre-work has been done and maybe you've already developed some questions or some things that you could comment on. And so I think that preparation piece, it's almost like it's so easy now to do that there's like no excuse for you to show up kind of unprepared in certain situations.
Well, I mean, honestly, even like grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes, like you can literally put your resume into ChatGPT and ask it to spell check it and grammar check it for you. And if you're not doing that, I think there's a lot of systems out there that will not even put that resume in front of a human being's eyes because those resumes are put through databases. And if there's any spelling mistakes, they're automatically rejected, right? So just thinking about all those things that before were like, oh, it's really nice to see that they have a really nice resume. I think that those are expectations now. And not doing that, I think almost takes you out of the equation. So being very purposeful about using the tools that you have to lay that foundational groundwork and not being one of those individuals that doesn't take advantage of what they have in front of them too. Yeah. Yeah, I think the same conversations are being had at our clients, right? In manufacturing and nonprofits, right? Like, what is that new wave of the future looking for from them as organizations and businesses? But then again, what are they seeking from the people that they're trying to hire? And the conversations are, similar in different various ways, right? I think different industries have different levels of adoption, probably firm to firm and organization to organization, right? And so I think they're all kind of, as we're having different networking events, right, and lunches and things of that nature, and we're exploring those conversations, I think they're kind of running up against the same issues. So,
well, and I think the younger generation right now really wants to feel purpose, right, and not to say that we didn't, but that's really a top issue for them, is like feeling like they can see the results of their work, right, or they can feel like there's really something positive coming from their work. And so I think we do see a lot of opportunities maybe for nonprofit clients because of that, right, but they always have the challenge of like the financial aspect of it. And so just continuing, I think, even from an accounting perspective, from a manufacturing company, whatever the business is, right, how do we show kind of like how what we're doing or what we're making, how it benefits, or how it, can be a positive thing maybe from the consumer or the person that's receiving those services on the other end, and just being able to continue to kind of share those points and share those stories, right? I mean, again, it goes back to the relationships, the stories. How do we share the stories of the positive impacts that we've had on people? But also, encouraging our clients to kind of do the same when they're thinking about how they're going to recruit and retain new hires.
Yeah, the world's fast, right? So before, those stories maybe unfolded in your career over years, right? You witnessed them, you saw other partners talking about it, you saw other leaders talking about it, and it kind of slow rolled, and maybe how you saw your place in that picture, in the bigger picture. And now I think just as a society, we're used to getting information fast and getting new information all the time. And so I think there's a bigger expectation to tell those stories upfront and to tell them often, right? And probably in small 30-second clips, right? I think that's what we're used to. But if that's the way that we're communicating and that's how people are digesting information, then when they're not getting that, it feels like there's a void, even if you do have a great story, right? So I really loved, we had at the annual meeting, and you had asked a couple of folks to share stories about their client experiences or their staff experiences. And I think we got a really great feedback. I don't know if you want to share kind of like what you had asked us to do and what we did.
Yeah, sure. So on that point, like I thought it'd be really important for especially younger staff to really hear, like sometimes they're in the background, maybe they're doing, the first couple steps of the project, but they're not always seeing the end result, or maybe they're not having that direct relationship with the client yet in these situations. And so I really thought it'd be important for some of our leaders to share, directly how something that they did, whether it was an outside project or whether it was just helping a company grow, but, really something tangible that they could point to and say, we provided this and the client was able to, receive that grant or receive funding or, get that loan or something like that, that really helped them to move their, business or organization to the next level. So I think that opportunity to share was really, really key and helps, like we were saying, like it really just helps the person see how, even though they may be doing a little piece of that work, like their work really matters and it's having a good positive impact.
I think showing, younger folks that I know in accounting, they often get pigeonholed in a lot of industries. If you're good at something, they keep you there. Especially like with us, they get an opportunity to see different things, and probably seeing that impact probably makes a big difference as far as where they want to work too. And it's our job as employers to convey that message and not trick them into coming in and then putting them in a corner, getting 2 good years out of them, and then they move on. So I think it's our job as employers too to convey that from the start.
Yeah, I would say like, I could be wrong here, but I think we differ a little bit in that strategy, right? So like you could have a bigger firm, right? And they might have that mindset of like, I just want 2 years out of some folks and whoever stays. Whereas I think that like we do try our best to keep as many folks engaged as long as possible, right? So I think we have a little bit of a different structure. But to your point, like keeping them engaged in those first 2 years when you're still kind of like not sure what this is, right? Like, what am I doing? I'm going through and putting some numbers in a tax return, or I'm auditing these invoices, or I'm doing this bookkeeping project. You don't see that end result as tangibly, right? And so, I think it helps to fill in those pieces early on.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, Tyler, I think one of the reasons we're able to attract some experienced talent is because of the variety that we offer, right?
Oh,
like the variety of types of clients, the variety of types of work, different industries. And so I do think that's appealing, and we want to follow through with our word, right? And make sure they have those experiences. And I think most people would say that it's been a positive shift because they don't feel like they can only work in this one lane. But to the beginning of this, circling back to the beginning of the discussion, like there's so many different lanes in accounting. There's so many different things that we're doing that our clients are asking for of us. That I think it does create that variety that a lot of people are looking for, and helps, again, in my personal experience, just keeps public accounting interesting. You're not doing the same thing every day. Every day we do something different. We have different conversations. And I think that's what, keeps us engaged and excited to continue.
Yeah, I do hear around the office that the variety of work is their favorite part of anywhere they work. So
yeah,
as I would too, I don't like the same thing over and over. Who does?
Yeah.
That brings its own challenges, right? Like, I think there's a lot of juggling involved, and because there's a lot of different pieces and a lot of different service areas, and but I think you can get stale if you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. So it's an ever changing industry, but I think our particular client base is also really varied and helps to keep it fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's probably our biggest challenge now is how do we adapt, right, to all the changes that are happening. And so when we think about new staff or, the kids that are coming out of college, like they've already kind of figured some of that out, right? Probably before us, because their life has been growing up with technology and all the, things that are ever changing. So I do think that's an interesting aspect of it. Is almost like we're relying on them to some extent to like know this better than us and using those skills that they have. And I'm sure you see that, on your side as well from a marketing perspective, but it's like sometimes they may know how to use a tool that we're just being introduced to, right? And we're like, oh, okay, how about you help us with this?
Yeah, I love when I find out new tools like that, but you almost feel guilty not finding it first, but
yeah. But you probably have the bridges. You have the knowledge and wisdom from doing it for however many years, right? And so bridging the two, right? So that if there is new innovative technology that they might know about and we don't, right? Well, how do we get that knowledge that helps that tool be useful to connect to them, right? And how do they then bring the knowledge about the tool back up to us so that we can all be effective?
I don't know if you guys think this way, but I do. I don't want to be where I don't know. Like, I don't want to outsource my creativity. So I don't know if you guys think this way as well.
Yeah.
But if a tool does a really good job, I kind of get upset. But I use the younger folks around me to kind of test that out sometimes it depends on the tool. But it has to do the rounds. But I feel like if I get rid of that part of me, it hurts.
Yeah.
Just because the old school part of me, I don't know. I'm in that weird middle ground where I grew up with tech. I accept it, but I don't want it doing everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a TV show I was just watching about this comedian who was somebody was trying to get her to buy this AI solution that would pretty much write her jokes for her. Right. And she was like, well, that's my job. Like that takes away everything about who I am. And even about that profession, if now AI is just writing the jokes, right? And so I think that's to the same point though. Like I think that's the biggest challenge with AI, right? Is we want to still remain genuine to who we are, right? And to our.
But if the joke's good, I don't know.
That's fair.
That was a big topic at the roast recently.
Yeah.
They have writers and they sound good, and then they do their own stand up, and you're like, well. Where was all, that was really good over there.
There's that song about Puerto Rico, that's all over Instagram, right? And then it turned out that it was written by AI.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the song's great. So what are we going to do? But I think it's interesting because AI was made based on what it learned from humans, right? So, I think there's a lot of arguments that are probably made by people who are way smarter than me about the fact that AI will learn from itself and then it'll start creating, or maybe it already creates like new ideas. I'd like to just see where that takes us, if that makes any sense, because I do feel like, at least from what we're seeing on the consumer side, I think there's still a piece where it becomes repetitive because it's learning on the same ideas that it's gotten. And I think that like any group of human beings, if they're surrounded by a group that has all the same ideas, will be a little stuck in groupthink. And I'm just interested to see if it can go beyond that. I don't really love it going beyond that because personally, I think AI should be a tool and not something that takes over instead of humans. And so there's a little bit of, we're not going to unpack AI today, but I would love to in the future. But I'm just thinking about the fact that, like, is it going to be some sort of a loop of ideas if human beings aren't bringing their own new ideas to the table, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and that's where I think it goes back to like talking about the students and their resumes and all that, right? Like if AI is creating your resume, like great, but you still have to be able to like have the conversation and share, and like kind of like sell your skills, right? Versus just what's on the paper. So it's like it can get your foot in the door, but it can't do everything else for you.
Well, and the people aspect, right, is like I think probably one of the most important parts, right? So that's still in the equation. Of how talent is sourced and picked, right? So, yeah.
I had a point that
losing it.
Yeah, I lost it. Oh, I was going to say, we could use these tools, but I think there's going to be a certain point in time where we're going to start to recognize that people are relying on it too much. Like I know by looking at paragraphs, whether or not you use like. My big thing, is the M dash. Now they're doing the 3 bullet points, the 3 words and the comma.
Yeah.
They start off with a quirky question. I don't know if it'll evolve. It's a people-pleasing machine. Any question I ask, it says, great question. And I could say, like, why don't carrots have parents? They'll be like, that's a great thought. I'm like, I don't know. And so I don't know. They're burning money each day. So there's hope that it's not going to take over too much. I think we can all, I don't know. But if you see the numbers, they're losing money, which is great, I guess. But then you get in the ethical situation. If you do create an all-knowing, all-powerful being and we're controlling it, that seems very unethical if it has a consciousness or whatever. So I still think that it will still be used in some way, but
it's interesting because I feel like all the college graduations, maybe not all of them.
Oh yeah, I saw all those.
But most of them this time around that had the speaker or the commencement speaker mention AI, they got recognition for that by being booed.
Yeah.
Pretty ostensibly.
Yeah. It was like 5 or 6.
Some couldn't finish their thought because the college students all booed. Right. And so I think there's this piece that we're, taking out of the equation in all these conversations is that you can create AI, but if there's no demand for it, then it's useless. Right. And so we're still back down to those economic principles of supply and demand. And I'm wondering if maybe they're overthinking the demand, because ultimately this has to be a tool that human beings want to use for a purpose. And if human beings aren't going to want to use that, then it doesn't matter how many tools and data centers you build, you're not going to have the demand for it. Right. And so I think there's maybe more to this, right? It's a bigger conversation of like, well, what is our autonomy? Will we get to choose? Will we not get to choose? But having groups of college students, so that next generation of professionals, basically just booing these people out of their graduation ceremonies, I think says a lot. And I think it's worth stopping and thinking about, because those are the people that are now going to lead our next generations of professionals. So,
well, and I think even with our staff, we're seeing that like if there's kind of like direct uses where it's not, obviously like research, things like that it's very helpful for. But I think there is a little bit, maybe an ethical dilemma, personal dilemma sometimes of like, well, I don't really feel comfortable going all in on this, but I want to use, I want to better my job and I want to do a few things to make it help me be more efficient. But like, I think there's probably a line that people, a lot of people are going to draw to say, well, this is, kind of taking away from, what I can provide or the service that I can do for these clients and their relationship and all of that. And so, maybe finding that fine line between those is where we're headed.
So if we wanted to wrap up today and kind of give people a few takeaways to take from our conversation, where do you think we'd probably land as kind of our top points?
I'd say probably the number one point is, as you're coming out of college, maybe looking for what your career path is going to look like. I'd say, the first point would be to do your research, right? Like figure out what kind of job you think you want, what might be a bit good fit for you. There's a lot of data out there to kind of do that research and go visit places, right? There's a lot of places like Society that offer in-house experiences, right? So whether it's accounting, whether it's a bank, something else, maybe financial services that you're thinking about utilizing with your accounting degree, I think do the research, see what opportunities are out there, and show up and try to learn more about it before you maybe jump into what your next role is.
Yeah, I would say, and as you're discovering what you're trying to do, obviously it's this is well said, but you should choose something that you enjoy to do after work as well. So I think as you're doing your job, you should be for fun, looking up ways to improve that particular skill that you're working on, and always setting goals for yourself and picking between those goals, which of those goals are going to improve my life in the next year. And then you start a new sheet and you say, okay, from that goal, how do I achieve that with actionable steps? Check in with yourself to be accountable, tell others so they can hold you accountable. I think all those things would help improve and define your life. Or ask people, what do you think I'm good at? What's the best thing I'm good at?
Yeah.
And then maybe work something off that.
Yeah. I would probably say go back to kind of what I touched on earlier is really just focusing on getting the most out of the college experience, right? Building great relationships with your professors, using your college experience to kind of build those soft skills, right? Communication, maybe group project management, presentations, right? Public speaking, and not thinking of them as a chore or something to overcome, but like ways to practice to get better so that you can be successful. So just really kind of leaning in entirely on that college experience to the best extent that you can, right? I know people have jobs and responsibilities and not everybody has the opportunity to do that. But when you get that opportunity, to not think of it as a burden and really think of it as a tool for the rest of your life. So I think that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, I think ultimately, again, it revolves around relationships, right? So the more relationships you can build during your college experience, as you mentioned, and then beyond that, outside of that, people that you grew up with, however you can kind of lean on those relationships and continue to learn how to work with people. Again, it's not always going to be easy. You're not always going to be with your friends, but it's like, how do I build relationships and make it a positive working environment for myself and others?
Thanks for joining us today. This was the Where We Meet podcast. If there's a topic that you want us to expand on or a topic you would like us to talk about, you can comment that below or use the email address in the description.